Hi, this is Debbie, and today I'm sharing a fun fruity background pattern using the new SSS stamp Fruit from the Heart set that I think packs a big punch despite being relatively quick to create. The Fruit from the Heart set has a variety of cute fruit images with hearts built into the designs. There are also a couple of large, great thank you sentiments with the option to have either the letter O or a piece of fruit in its place, as well as a number of penny sentiments to coordinate too. I spied a fun background on Pinterest that used some lemons with a lovely aqua with a white grid background and thought this set would be perfect for creating a similar style. I'll link the pin in the description if you want to check that out. To create the pattern, I placed a piece of Neenah Solar White card in the mini MISTI and took the grapefruit image and started stamping in the top right corner. I placed the slice so that it overhung the edge of the card to create a more interesting pattern. I stamped the image twice with lemon chiffon ink to get a good clear impression, and then I rocked and rolled lemon ZING ink around the edge of the slice to give the rind a deeper colour. I'm tilting the ink pad so that it only touches the outside rind of the image and not the centre. I repeated this process, moving the slice of grapefruit around the panel, and now I should perhaps confess that when I stamped the pattern I was thinking of it being a lemon slice. However, later on when I added the coordinating penny sentiment, I realised the aim was for it to be a grapefruit. However, I think it could be any slice of citrus fruit you'd like. I'm not really sure if there are any anatomical differences between the structure of one citrus fruit and another, but let's face it, as long as you are using the right colours, then the mind will read it as whatever you want it to be. Fortunately for me, I think a lemon and a grapefruit have a similar colourway. Having stamped the slices of fruit on the background panel, I then removed the card and stamped the image again on pieces of masking paper. I'm going to lay a stencil on top of the grapefruit and blend ink through it, and I want to protect the slices from the background colour. I had stamped 8 slices of fruit, and so I stamped out and cut out 8 masks. For the masks I cut around the image, leaving a white border. I kept the outline organic in line with the images, and so wasn't overly concerned if my outlines weren't perfect. I added each of the 8 masks over the stamped images, and then with the masks in place I pulled out the SSS GRID Stencil. I took this outside for ventilation reasons and sprayed a little repositional adhesive over the one side. I then laid the stencil over the background, and I chose Cloudy Sky ink to blend over the stencil with a Picket fence blender brush. The original inspiration piece for this card used a brighter blue for the background, but I've come to realise that my heart lies with more muted shades, and the muted blue of Cloudy Sky suits me better than a brighter blue. Also, I think this colour gives the pattern a more on-trend style, and I could see this pattern on some stylish stationery or fabric. I kept blending and blending and blending until I had a smooth, even background colour, and then I lifted the stencil and masks, and I say this every time I do this, but nothing beats lifting up a stencil to reveal the pattern underneath, or tentatively lifting a mask to reveal the pristine image underneath. I guess it stems from the relief to see that everything has worked out as hoped, and the worries over the stencil shifting or the masking paper getting too soaked and colour seeping through were unfounded. I was really pleased with how this background came out, and now complete it was simply a case of adding the sentiment next. I chose the nice simple fun thank you font and lined up the first part of the sentiment using the grid pattern and stamped it in VersaFine ONYX black ink. This is my favourite ink for sentiments as it gives great crisp results. I then aligned the second line of the sentiment and stamped that in black too. I trimmed the panel down to centre the sentiment better and also to make the piece just slightly smaller than an A2 card base, and then I added foam adhesive to the back of the panel and adhered it to a white card base, cut and scored from Neenah Solar White in the 110 weight for a good sturdy card base. For the coordinating penny sentiment, I chose to ink up a scrapper piece of white card with cotton candy ink by swiping the ink pad directly onto the card and then drying it thoroughly before placing it in the MISTI. I treated the card with an anti-static powder bag as I intend to emboss the sentiment, and the powder will help prevent embossing powder randomly sticking everywhere. I then stamped the sentiment in clear embossing ink, sprinkled with white embossing powder and heat set before trimming to a skinny banner, adding foam adhesive to the back of the banner and then using the grid on the background pattern to help me align the banner on straight. To finish off the card, I dotted around a few pink and main silver glossy dots and the clear sparkly sequins from the SSS stamp Girl's Best Friend sequin pack. I kept the sequins in place with Gina glue and thought these clear embellishments brought in a juicy feel. And that finishes this card using inspiration from Pinterest to create a fruity background pattern to pair with a modern thank you sentiment with coordinating punny greeting. I'll leave links in the YouTube description below to the products that I've used today, as well as a link to the coordinating blog post over at limedoodledesign.com. I want to thank you for joining me today, and if you've enjoyed this tutorial, I'd be delighted if you'd subscribe to this channel. Also, if you want to get notified when a new video is up, don't forget to hit the bell button next to the subscribe button too. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.